Hey everyone, Teo here. Today I'm reviewing some alcohol markers that I have received from Ohuhu recently for review purposes. And by some markers, I mean they sent over a lot more markers than I expected. So that's a 100 color Oahu set, which is US $53, and this is a 168 color Honolulu set, which is US $134. Alright, let me give you the bottom line up front. These alcohol markers perform quite well, and they are extremely competitively priced, so in my opinion, they are really worth the money. If you buy the markers in a set, the average cost of each marker can be around 50 cents to $1 each, so that is very attractive pricing. Shown on the screen right now are the different series of alcohol markers sold by the company. There are big and small markers with different types of tips, such as the fine, chisel, and brush tips, and the markers have different ink capacities. There is also a marker with 18mm chisel tip, which is for drawing really broad strokes. Obviously, the price of the markers will vary depending on the series. For example, if you buy the Oahu marker with 2 ml ink capacity individually, each marker is about $2. But if you buy this in a set, the cost of each marker can come down to 50 cents. And with the Honolulu series, each marker is about $2.50 in US currency. But if you buy this in a set, the average cost can come down to just $1. At the time of review, the company has a total of 481 colors in their range, and I'm not sure if that includes the colorless blender. Not all the series will have all the colors, and even the largest set only has 320 colors. The markers are available individually as well as sold in sets, and there are theme sets such as skin tones, pastels, grayscales. And if you buy them in sets, they will come with this carrying bag with a handle and a strap which is removable. This is a canvas bag with a zip. And all the markers are stored vertically. Because the markers are stored vertically, be careful when you're opening the markers for the first time, because the ink may concentrate at one end and there may be excess ink that may have flowed out into the marker cap. So when you open the cap, be careful not to have any ink splatter out, and this one is clean. With this set, I actually have a few markers with excess ink in the cap. The excess ink is not only in the cap, but there is some on the marker as well, and due to how I opened the marker, there is some ink on my finger as well. So when you open the marker for the first time, make sure to not have the ink splatter out on your paper. So you may want to check the markers while you are creating color swatches for them. If there are any dry markers, you can contact the company and they should either refund or replace the marker for you. At least that's what I read online. Markers are best stored horizontally so that the ink can reach both sides. If I have the markers like this and I remove some of the markers at the bottom, the top will push everything down. This divider inside the bag is not hard enough. All the markers will have the color code, and the name on the cap, and because the color is not going to be the exact representation of the colored ink on paper, I highly recommend you create color swatches for all these colors. This is the Honolulu series marker. This has a cylindrical body, and the Honolulu series is the best series of alcohol markers to get from Ohuhu for two reasons. This has more ink capacity compared to other markers, except for the extra broad markers. So this has 3 ml ink capacity compared to the 2 ml that you can find with the Oahu marker. And this cylindrical body design is just better. This marker has an extrusion here which will prevent the marker from rolling off the table. So to remove the cap, you just pull it. The thing with this marker is you can sort of twist it to remove the cap, but with the other marker with the oval design, if you twist the cap, you will see that the shape of the cap will change. That's because the plastic here is kind of soft. So if you want to remove this cap, you have to pull it off like this. Oops, excess ink. For the cylindrical marker, you can twist and pull. It doesn't matter, the shape of the cap will not change. So this is the better design. The caps can be posted. If you are buying markers to create illustrations or artworks, I highly recommend you buy the markers with the brush tip. And the Honolulu markers are available with either the brush tip and the chisel tip, or you can get this with a bullet tip or the chisel tip. The brush tip will let you paint or color tiny areas and details more easily. It is very difficult to use the chisel or bullet tip to color small areas. If the marker tip wears out or if the brush tip becomes blunt, you can actually replace the tip. The company does sell replacement tips. So you can use the nib or tip remover to pull this out. Personally, I like to use paper to just pull this out like this. And the other point is also sharp, so you can reverse this and use the other point. And I do waste some ink like this. And if you want to refill the marker, you can put the ink through the hole here. I have the fear of this thing clipping off the brush tip, which is why I use the paper. But as you can see, if I use paper, the ink can get onto my fingers. And now let's swatch out some of the colors. For this review, I will just swatch out the green colors because there are just way too many colors for me to create color swatches for. So here I have G1 to G9, and the color code is not the pigment code. These are alcohol markers, so they are using dye-based inks, they are not using pigments. And the names such as ocean green, glass green, vivid green, turquoise green, emerald green, these are all just for marketing purposes. I'm actually not sure whether it's better to swatch out the colors in a sketchbook or on a big sheet of paper, because if you have the color swatches on a separate piece of paper, you can pin it up or stick it up on your wall for quick reference. But when you have the color swatches in a sketchbook, you have to flip through the pages to get to the page and the color you want. These markers are very juicy. There is a lot of ink. The thing about markers is you are going to get concentrated ink, concentrated colors, and there's no way to lighten the color except to buy a lighter color. These are alcohol inks, so they dry pretty quickly, almost instantly, and they do not smell. They are considered permanent markers in the sense that once you lay down the ink, they are permanent, but these are using dye-based ink, so when you expose the color to light for long periods of time, the colors will fade. If you are creating your artworks in sketchbooks, you don't really have to worry about the colors fading, because when you close the sketchbook, the colors will not be exposed to light. But if you are creating artworks or illustrations for display purposes where the art will be exposed to light, then you will really have to worry about the colors fading. And with alcohol markers, I highly recommend you scan your art whenever you complete your art. Let's see whether the color on the cap can match the color on the paper. And this looks quite similar. This is G2, vivid green, quite similar. This is ocean green, G3. The colors don't always match though. So for olive yellow, the color is lighter on the cap, and for geranium, you can see this color is more vibrant on the cap and it's darker on paper. Alcohol inks can bleed through the paper unless you are using really thick paper or marker paper that's treated to handle alcohol ink. So these are very juicy markers. I highly recommend you place a piece of paper between the pages, or in this case, this sketchbook actually comes with a plastic sheet that you can place between the pages. And now let's have the alcohol markers go over some black ink. So this is pigmented liquid ink, this is pigmented gel ink, this is ink from the Winsor Newton fine liner technical pen, and this is the ink from the Sharpie marker. This is probably alcohol ink. And the color that I'm using is lemon yellow. So I'm going to press down really hard to go over the ink. I don't see any reaction with the alcohol inks and the pigmented inks, but with the Sharpie marker I can see some ink coming out from the edge, but it's not that obvious. Anyway, do allow your ink to dry completely before you use the markers, otherwise you may still pull the black out from the lines and create streaking marks like this. And now let me try and create a gradient with yellow, orange and red. So this is sunflower. This is orange. I'm using the chisel tip. And this is deep red. So let me have the red here. And I'm going to use the yellow again to try and blend the orange with the yellow. Okay, I may have to use a lot of ink to get that blending done. And this is orange with deep red. How easy it is to blend the colors will also depend on the paper you use. And this paper is not exactly marker paper. Let's create the blend again, this time on actual marker paper that's treated to handle alcohol ink. So this paper is even smoother than the paper earlier. And when I have the ink on this paper, I can actually see the ink takes a bit longer to dry compared to the other paper, which is more absorbent. And because this paper is brighter, the colors look more vibrant compared to the other paper. So let's go back to the yellow again. Yeah, so you can see some blending there. This marker paper is not exactly high quality marker paper, so I can see the paper fiber coming off. Oops, I used the wrong color. I did use the correct color. This is orange. Is this orange? Yeah, it's orange. This 70 GSM marker paper does a pretty good job at preventing the alcohol ink from bleeding over, even with multiple layers. But the downside is at the areas where ink is concentrated, you can see the semi-glossy surface. And markers should dry with matte, non-glossy surface. So this to me is quite distracting. The blending that I have here looks better compared to what I have here because I don't see the individual brush strokes and the gradation looks smoother. There's a colorless blender included which can also help with the blending. Let's color this sketch. Now, alcohol markers can be used or are commonly used by professional manga artists to create very detailed illustrations. For me, my style is mostly the flat coloring style. If I'm using the markers outdoors, I will be coloring really quickly because I don't really have the time to blend the colors. Okay, here I'm trying to paint the shirt and try to not have the brush strokes be so obvious. I'm going to use the other color to add some details. Okay, so this is the back and I'm going to use this to add some shadow details to make certain areas darker. Let's see if I can blend some of the darker green to the lighter green. I am able to do so. It's just that my technique with markers is not that great. I'm not a marker person. So the brush tip is great for painting details, for coloring in those small areas, for coloring within the lines. If I actually place the marker tip on the paper for extended period of time, the ink can actually blend out. Again, that will also depend on the paper that you are using. So if you want to color more accurately, you have to go a bit faster. The chisel tip is good if you are into creating very stylized art. If you want to draw or color really quickly, this is good. The marker tips are labeled on the marker. Let's have R2 and later R4 for the darker red. As long as you go over the ink a few times, you will not see the individual brush strokes. So this is R8. Oops, it does not look like there is any difference. Let's layer another color on top of the red. So this is gray, a neutral gray, 5. This is how the gray looks, and this is actually light gray. Let's have neutral gray, 7. Oh, okay, this is much darker, which is why I said you should always create color swatches for your markers. So this is kind of dark. I actually wanted to overlay onto the red to create the shaded or the darker red for shadows, but this is way too dark. Let's have some grass on the ground, and I'm using the brush tip to get the tapered strokes. Darker green, just to get some variation. So this is the chisel tip. Now if you want to create round points, you have to use the brush tip, because this is going to give you the rectangular shapes. The thing with alcohol inks is you can't go over with the same color to create the darker shade. Sometimes you really do need like the actual darker color. And now let me add some details with the white gel pen. Alright, to conclude, these Ohuhu markers are really worth the money. They perform really well and they are very affordable. So these are markers I can recommend easily. And if you guys are interested to get the markers, you can check out the purchase links that I have for you in the video description below. See you guys in the next video. Bye!